A long time ago, on a comics page far, far away. Greetings and welcome to May the Panel Be With You, the Star Wars comic book show brought to you by the Punch Up Entertainment Network. I am your humble host, Mike Gargoni, and joining me, as always, the Admiral Krell to my 13K Super Probe droid, it's John Campbell.
Hello, everybody. Oh, man, we're finally past The Empire Strikes Back. It's uncharted territory for us here as we truck our way to Return of the Jedi.
And yet it feels like territory we have trod before because there are certain creative teams that are coming back to us at full bear, and it both feels like a warm embrace and also, oh yeah, I remember why I didn't like some of this stuff.
I remember why I broke up with this person.
Carmen Infantino, I just can't quit you.
I know. Well, the thing about it, it really does feel like, all right, we got through The Empire Strikes Back adaptation. Now, back to our bullshit. Back to the same shit we always do.
Yeah, but also we have a whole new toy box to play with because
Yes.
the writers of this have now seen Empire Strikes Back. The Star Wars universe is just a little bit bigger, a little bit more complex, a little bit more solidified in terms of what Star Wars is.
Yes, and what I think is what's interesting when we talk about this issue in its entirety is there are times that take advantage of that, and then there are times when I'm like, all right, now you have no excuse not to know what a Star Wars blaster looks like. Like, there are things like that where I'm going like, okay, you do have new toys to play with, which of course is central to this issue that we're talking about. But also there are things where I'm like, come on, man, now also parts of Star Wars are more solidified, and you're still ignoring them. So it's an interesting balance, but like Infantino's still gonna Infantino, man.
Okay. It's true. Speaking of which, we are, of course, covering issue number 45 of the 1977 Marvel Star Wars Comics run. This particular issue came out in March of 1981, and the creative team is an oh-so-familiar lineup. We've got Archie Goodwin as a writer, Carmen Infantino on pencils, we've got Chick Stone and Gene Day on inks. Never a good sign when you have two inkers.
No, I love it, and I love that in the actual book itself, the credit is Day and Stone. You know, that lovable comedy team of inkers. They couldn't be more mismatched.
We have Glennis Oliver, Nay Ween on colors, and John Costanza on letters, with a couple of interesting editor notes here. First off, we have a certain shooter is now editor-in-chief, and don't you forget it.
And he's back to Jim. He stopped being James Shooter. He's back to, Also,
he's good old approachable Jim.
Don't forget I'm editor-in-chief, but also, call me Jim.
But there is another name on this that you may or may not recognize, because listed as editor here we have Louise Jones. Now, do you know who Louise Jones is?
The name sounds familiar, but I can't place it exactly.
That's because Louise Jones is not a real person.
There you go.
Louise Jones is a pseudonym used by the person who would eventually become Louise Simonson.
Yeah, I thought that might be the case, that it was Louise
but Jones is not her maiden name. That is just a name she used in Marvel editorial.
Well, it's interesting. The thing I was going to bring up about what's interesting is coming to this post, the Empire Strikes Back adaptation is up to this point, I think Goodwin has been editor as well as writer for much of this. So the fact that they have an editor on the book is interesting now, that there's somebody editing the book that wasn't... I mean, Archie Goodwin was writing his own ticket there for a while, so I'm curious why it was felt necessary, or if Goodwin, I don't know if it was just too much work or something like that, or he wanted some other... I mean, obviously, Louise Simonson, who will know her as that name, will come to be a comics legend in her own right for a lot of reasons with X-Men and Superman and stuff like that. The woman created Steel, for God's sakes.
She was married to Jeffrey Catherine Jones. That's where the Jones comes from.
Not yet married to Walt at this point.
No. But yeah, she would eventually break up with him, and she continued using the name Louise Jones for several years. She eventually met I think she is with Oh yeah, they married in 1980, so they're absolutely together at this point.
Okay. All right. Well, good. Because they are one of the great couples of comics, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, still together to this day, as far as I know, right?
Yep. Yes, absolutely. And like I said, I mean, two incredible comics creators in their own right. So
Absolutely, yeah. And she will have a hand in this book in and out going forward, as will the previously mentioned Walt Simonson. And boy, again, I've read ahead a little bit.
Yeah.
When we get to him, it is such a stark contrast
Oh,
in terms
God. Well,
of
I
the
mean,
art.
look at what we had when we had was it who was it on the it was I've already forgotten because Splinter of the Mind's Eye broke me. Who did the Empire Strikes Back stuff?
The Empire Strikes Back stuff was, as I quickly scroll through my comic book app,
It's not Michael Golden, is it? Is it Michael Golden?
no, it was Al Williamson.
Al Williamson, that's it. Yes. Yeah. Michael Golden did that fill-in that we loved, but it is interesting that pretty much any time they move away from Infantino, we're much more celebratory of the art.
Well, and having read ahead a few issues, like I'll say, and we'll get to this in the coming weeks, but Infantino does up his game a little bit, at least in some aspects. His Chewbacca going forward will not be nearly as contentious as he has been in the past.
I did notice, and it's interesting that it is mostly the same creative team, because I will talk about, they do seem to take lessons from the Empire Strikes Back adaptation in here, particularly when it comes to the coloring, I feel like, in this issue. We'll talk about there's a lot of darker hues to it and a little bit more intensity, and that may just have to do with this horror story we're being told, because let's take a look at what we're talking about here, Gorgoni.
Yeah, let's look at this cover as we get to Death Probe.
Death Probe! Death Probe, they definitely open for Iron Maiden at some point. My God, Death Probe.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Death Probe opened for Anvil in 1983.
There you go. That's right. Who could forget the Death Probe Anvil tour? But this cover is definitely, it tells us, man, we're post Empire and shit's getting real.
But it also sort of doubles down on some of the stuff from Empire. Again, with that whole new toy box we've got going on, where it's like, remember the probe droid from Empire? We've got that, but bigger.
I know that. I just love the idea of like Carmen Infantino and or Archie Goodwin sitting in a theater going, probe droid, you say?
Could we add more death to that probe?
Yeah, I noticed he didn't do much in the way of death. Can we fix that? But the biggest thing I want to highlight about this cover is the artist credit on it, because this is not Carmine Infantino. If you look over in the corner of the display panel there, you'll see the name Hama. And you know as well as I do that this is a cover drawn by Larry Hama, who was and still is continuing his run. I love that through multiple publishers, he has continued his massive, sprawling G.I. Joe saga. Like, G.I. Joe went from Marvel to IDW, and numbering is continued on that. And then now IDW lost G.I. Joe to Image, and they announced, don't worry, G.I. Joe Real American Hero will pick up from the same numbering at Image. Larry Hama can just keep telling the G.I. Joe story for decades and decades.
Good for him.
He is the G.I. Joe guy, and he's done a lot of other stuff too, but that guy, his commitment to that book, it doesn't get shouted out enough, but he has well surpassed Claremont on like a hold over a certain, set of characters. So
if you've never read his Wolverine run from the 80s and 90s, oh, it's great.
Okay. So good. And also, I believe, I'm almost certain of this, the only Marvel creative to also be a recurring actor on the show MASH.
What a specific thing.
It's true, though. He was on MASH.
Look, if Jim Shooter had his way, he would also have been on MASH.
Yeah. Jim Shooter's, I could have been on MASH.
They asked me. I said no.
Yeah, I turned him down.
But yeah, this cover here, we've got presumably Luke Skywalker in a pure white spacesuit here.
I don't know what's
dodging
going on
laser blasts.
Dodging laser blasts from the Death Probe.
Death Probe!
Which I do imagine that plays every time the Death Probe appears.
Look, Death Probe and Mastercom is the new sitcom I need from NBC
Probe?
this fall.
Yeah. This fall on NBC, it's Death Probe and Mastercom. How will these two share an apartment? Just trying to make it as ad execs in the big city.
Death Probe, you can't keep killing my dates when I bring them over.
Death Probe doesn't talk. He just goes.
Yeah, of course not. No.
Damn it,
John,
Death Probe.
Death Probe only speaks one language, and that's death.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, he and MODOK would get along very well. The
That's
mechanized
true, yeah.
designed only for killing. Death Probe does seem to be able to do other stuff, so he might actually have MODOK. Because once again, only for killing.
Sure. But to be fair, Death
to
Probe...
me on my desk.
That's
right
very
here.
good.
I just have MODOK next to my desk. All right.
Death Probe and MODOK can both do other things to accomplish killing/death.
It's true, but they all have to lead to the same outcome, right?
Yes,
Like
exactly.
all roads have to lead to death or killing. All right.
Let's get into Death Probe.
Probe.
Because it's hard times in the galaxy, John. It's hard times.
It is. We know because we saw The Empire Strikes Back and things went bad, you guys. But also, Luke is like mildly affected by that in this issue, I would say.
We'll get into it. Look, there's a drinking game that you could try to play with this issue of Luke recapping previous events versus Luke talking exclusively to himself. And if you did that drinking game, you would die.
Oh yeah. We here at May the Pound Be With You do not endorse that drinking game.
No,
by
100% not.
Good Lord. No, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. It's like this issue is so strange to me, and we'll talk about this but just keep in mind as we flip through this, listeners/viewers, that it really is this weird merging of like we still want to do the same Star Wars comic with the exact same characters that we've been using, but also we're forced to acknowledge that The Empire Strikes Back happened.
And it was a bad time for everyone involved.
Because like ideally they should have been like, all right, we need to think of this as a new comic almost, spinning out of the events of that. These characters are radically changed by what happened in that movie. And you do not get much of a sense of that in this, beyond a couple of like, when it's like, oh yeah, some bad shit happened. Anyway, back to the same stuff we always do.
Well, and it is like overly edited bad shit. We'll get to it, but there's like one explicit panel that made me actually laugh out loud.
Oh yeah. All right. By the way, open to this first page. The font on Death Probe fucking rules.
Well, that's from their 85 tour, John.
It absolutely is. Death Probe coming to your city.
I had this on a t-shirt.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, somebody make this t-shirt. It must be out there. I want this exact font on a t-shirt and just wear it walking around in a Death Probe shirt. And then be like, yo, man, you don't know Death Probe?
You don't know Death Probe?
You don't know anything. All right. Yes. Here we go. It's a Rebel.
You know that new sound you were looking for? Well, check this.
Hey, Ozzy Osbourne. It's your cousin Marvin Osborne. All right. We'll get to the Back to the Future comic. But no.
We have a battle damaged blockade runner limping through deep space. Its long-range scanners are inoperative. Each exhausted crew member praying their return to the Rebel rendezvous will be without incident.
By the way, if you love Goodwin prose, does he go for it in this issue?
He is verging on Claremontian in this issue, and I think that's complimentary. I think there's actually some very good, like, purple prose in this.
He really, we'll talk about it, and this is where it starts, but it goes more so down into the issue too. He is really writing this as like, this is a war comic.
Yeah.
These are men who have seen combat and killed, and they're dying. It's like, and I was just like, whoa.
The tone it's going for is verging on horror comic at times.
It is. I just wish that Infantino's art backed him up more.
Yes, because as the captioning tells us, as the rebels are hoping for a trip without incident, that it almost is.
Until we see this thing.
It's a swooping... I mean, look, it's the Death Probe. Let's be honest.
Death Probe!
And on the next page, we get this huge double-page spread that like really gets us into the whole death probingness of it. I'll expand our image here so we can see the whole thing, covering up our beautiful faces momentarily. But
mainly because it's just the titular death probe murdering everyone.
look, we love to use the phrase coined by friend Dan Scotty that people getting murdered the bejesus out of them. And
yep, that is exactly what's happening.
So we have the interior of the blockade runner here. We have some rebels talking to each other with their glorious 70s mustaches.
Oh God, these guys.
I love the guy in the top right panel, but on the bottom right corner of the panel who's just lounging in his space chair, just kind of leaning back and being like, oh man, what the hell is going up with this?
Hey man, hopefully this is an incident-free trip for us. Oh God, a death probe. Yeah. Yeah, they're basically just going like, sir, there's something on the monitor.
And they don't know what it is, but then it suddenly changes course and it collides with the ship. And we get, again, we started in on this like purple, like horror comic prose.
This was the one that got me, yeah.
Collision course. The full energy shields come up just a fraction too late. Men die, sucked to their doom in a sudden rush of escaping atmosphere, and even as the damaged compartments are sealed off, the destruction is only beginning.
Men died.
And you see floating corpses like being ejected out of the spaceship.
When do you ever see that in Star Wars?
Never.
No, you never see. I can't think of anything. And by the way, to be this guy, technically they were blown out into space, not sucked out into space.
But John, space is a vacuum. Why wouldn't they suck?
Yeah, right. It's a. Oh, the sucking power of space. Yeah. Oh my God. Anyway, yeah. The destruction is only beginning. For with the violent bursting of an interior bulkhead, the true nature of what has hit the rebel vessel is revealed. An Imperial droid! Which are famously deadly.
To themselves, maybe.
I know. We will come to learn that this thing is a specialized death probe, but this guy is shouting an Imperial probe droid as if they know that to be a threat already.
Well, and look, we know that probe droids can be a problem, and especially if you've played the Jedi Fallen Order games, like there are Viper droids that can be a pain in the ass. But
he didn't say Viper droid; he said probe droid.
No, but this thing is like tearing through bulkheads and gunning people down, and it's huge in comparison to some of these things.
Well, it's one of my favorite things when we get to Admiral Krell later, that he's so proud of this murder bot he has built.
Oh, yeah. Because, it's gunning people down. I really love this 2-page spread, this double wide art of I think Infantino actually does do a good job of, conveying this, murder apparatus that is appearing on the ship.
Yeah, and I love the one guy getting hit in the front here and his back bending back, like, ah! Oh, God. Why?
Infantino just can't stop himself from drawing fucking Marvel comic space adventure boots, though.
Never. He will never let that go. Never forget what I'm doing here.
Have you ever seen someone in a Star Wars movie wear pleated boots?
Oh, their boots. Everything is so uniform in Star Wars. Everything is so classic military. In its precision and streamlining, that you're just like, what are you doing, man? Everybody's got fucking pirate boots on. Yeah. I did, because, I am looking at this again. An Imperial probe droid, and then very quietly somebody's like, but it's bigger, better armed, and but that's a small little also, it is a probe droid, but it's actually different than others.
And we get to this next page, and Goodwin just fucking going for it and reaping death as it moves methodically, purposefully through the ship. But with so many targets, the probe robot's logic circuits key its attack on movement.
By the way, more things need to use the term reaping death. Good lord.
If you're gonna call the fucking name of your comic Death Probe, you gotta really emphasize how much death is gonna happen.
I will say they do not mislead us on that. This is a death probe and a half, man. Good lord.
This probe ain't dealing in maimings. It's
No.
death.
It is killing it, and as this states, it is killing anything that moves.
There's a guy who was faking his own death and like rolls around and tries to shoot, but then is just fucking stomped by this probe. So this probe is shooting lasers. It's grabbing people and flinging them around.
Did you talk about later it using its pincers, which is just like, oh god, Jesus! Also, people getting torn apart.
This sequence at the bottom 4 panels of this page is like unnecessarily brutal and grim.
It is rough, man. It is absolutely rough.
This is a classic Claremont move that Goodwin does here, when in the captioning, he introduces a character by name. Yeah. As he says, as we see a rebel officer rushing towards a console, and the captioning says, "He is Rad Torlant, one of the ship's junior officers. He joined the rebellion when the Empire seized his home planet of Nutria 4. Another few seconds at the communicator, and he might have become a hero," as the art shows the probe droid grabbing this guy and shoving his face through the console.
This guy gets it. I love the idea of like, here's this guy. He's a good guy. Watch him die worse than anyone.
And the captain goes on to say, instead, he becomes one more anonymous victim in a long, bitter war.
It is so brutal. I'm going to give this guy a name and a backstory just so you really feel it when he gets murdered in front of you. Good God. Goodwin's not playing around now. We're post-Empire, baby. Shit's getting dark.
I mean, look, we're a few, like, blood-soaked pinchers away from this being an extremely grim comic.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it is like, I'm like, Goodwin, are you aiming to write the Alien comic now? Is that more where you're going for? Yeah, and so yeah, they don't get this guy doesn't get the word out. Although once again, we should mention he has both Marvel Comics boots and gloves.
Yeah.
You know, those rebels in their gloves.
I mean, there's plenty of rebels wearing gloves.
But they're the pilots in the X-Wings. They're not just guys on ships.
That's true.
Yeah. Like Han puts on the gloves when he flies the Falcon.
Ready to meet everyone's new favorite bad guy who will definitely last more than one issue.
I know, when they name this guy, I'm like, who?
Because we cut to an Imperial Star Destroyer, and there on the bridge we have another gloriously mustachioed...
I love this guy. This guy's my favorite. Because number one, I like
gray-haired Imperial officer.
The gray-haired guy. Like, I like to imagine there's a whole thing here that this guy is older. He should have climbed the ranks, and now he's kind of pissed that he has to take orders from a younger guy.
Because he's handing off a printed report. I don't know where the printer is on this Death Star bridge.
You know what you've never seen in Star Wars is a. Hold on. All right, there you go, Captain. You know, whatever.
It's a dot matrix printer on the bridge of a Star Destroyer.
Yeah, that feels very not cool. Like, very not sci-fi. Hold on, let me print it out for you. Just a moment, Lord Vader. It's printing now.
And he even says, here's a printout of its progress, Admiral.
And then, satisfactorily. Most satisfactorily.
See, I imagine this guy with a German accent just because he looks like a Nazi villain out of stock casting.
He really does. The scar on his face is such a nice touch.
Yeah. And like the shadows over his eyes. The coloring here is very like 70s. Like we're still sticking with like the weird 70s coloring ratios here with like the purples and the pinks and the blues.
That's hurting some of the intensity of this to me. And like, yeah, the idea that the shadow cast by the bill of his hat is causing this blue. If you were just to look at it, you go like, why does he have like a mask on?
Or like blue face paint from the nose up.
Yeah, it's very weird. He did see Braveheart recently and really took to the blue face paint. Yeah.
But thankfully, he refers to himself in the third person, so we know who this guy is.
I do like something that is consistent in this comic, which is these guys always want credit. Like every villain in this comic has been like, and the Emperor shall know my name.
The rebels will know the fullest measure of these capabilities,
Yeah.
and the Emperor himself will praise the name of Admiral Damon Krell.
Damon Krell. Yeah, he does feel very Indiana Jones villain. Um, which add those Marvel, add those Indiana Jones comics from this era to your app, please. I would love to do some kind of spin-off show about those. Because I have the omnibuses of them, but that's not really going to help us.
Yeah, well, unless you can find a second copy for me somewhere.
Yeah. They're very fun. All right, so yes. Unfortunately, though, also headed in this direction is I got to talk about what's going on with this X-wing. It doesn't look right, right?
It's because the wings are too far forward and there's like a weird butt on it.
Yeah, and they're not. It doesn't look right.
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, of course, who of our characters has the terrible misfortune to be heading right to where the death probe is? Why, it's old Luke Skywalker.
And look, thus begins something we have harped on in the past, but is so brutal in this issue, and that is Luke talking to nobody.
Well, it really is omnipresent in this because he's the only character in this for the most part. It's basically just him, Death Probe, and R2 for the vast majority of this thing.
Yeah, like ostensibly he's talking to R2 the whole time, but he's doing it in such a way and narrating what's happening in such a way that's like R2's right there. He can see what's happening.
Yeah, that is. Well, I always feel like that's their like excuse about why he's saying this stuff. Well, he's talking to R2, and you're like, yeah, but that doesn't hold water, man.
Yeah, but the way some of this like dialogue reads, it's like Archie Goodwin is getting paid by the word.
I swear he is sometimes. Yeah.
For all I know, Marvel in this era, he might have been.
I have no idea. We know about all kinds of shit that was happening in comics at this time. So yes, they're flying, and he goes, R2, you know, once again, Art, as you know.
Yeah, and he recaps Empire Strikes Back.
I took this flight to test how well I'm recovering from all the things that happened to me in Empire. See previously on Star Wars.
And we get a brief recap of everything that happened to Luke in Empire on this next page. He was talking to Yoda of a normal size, thank God.
Well, he looks like Yoda now. There you go. There's Yoda. But you know what? Unfortunately, because Infantino's drawing, he's nailed Yoda, but Luke looks weird as hell.
Speaking of weird as hell, we then get a comically in the way pillar of Luke getting his hand chopped off.
Oh, isn't that nice? Isn't that nice, folks? And then falling. He's like, "Oh, it's been so tough, man. Remember?" And basically, it is the comic going, "Remember that movie, guys? Remember all the stuff that happened to Luke? All right, now you're caught up."
Yeah, I love that. Like, this really leans on the whole like Luke was trying to like kill himself rather than join Vader at the end of Empire. That like I don't know if that's the read of the end of that movie.
I've never seen it as that because that is pretty fucking dark.
But like this specifically highlights that like the Millennium Falcon swooped in to save him.
Yeah,
Which,
Luke, no, you have so much to live for," said Leia.
In the comic, we definitely saw this, where it's like it really they conveyed it like Luke fell off of Cloud City and the Millennium Falcon swooped in and caught him as he was falling.
Now that I'm thinking about that, yes, the comic does imply that. The movie makes it pretty clear he's not trying to kill himself because in the movie it's really he's trying to hang on to what strength he has to that like antenna that's on the right.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
the movie
Calling out to Leia.
Yeah, he's clinging to life, hoping for rescue. The comic did make it seem like he just fell down that shaft and landed on the Millennium Falcon. Oh, shit. Oh, thank God this was here. Thank the Force, actually, I should say, as these comics love to say. Oh, thank the Force. Whew.
But Infantino leans in at the end when he says, "But he now wears a bionic hand in place of the real one lost forever. A grim, lasting reminder of the battle and its haunting implications."
And then I love the drawing of like, yeah, look at my hand, man. That's a robot hand.
So at the end of Empire, Luke's hand is replaced by the cybernetic one, and when it's all said and done, it is meant to just like look like a normal hand, and it isn't until later that like in Return of the Jedi where the black glove is established, and in like later movies and TV shows he'll just have a straight up bionic hand,
which is a cool look.
Sure.
But yes,
Yeah.
you're talking about here. They've already put the skin on it and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because I
they're
think this is a
testing.
Comics Code Authority thing.
Yeah, because they're testing it in the movie where they're doing the shocking the different wires of it and making this, which is cool. I remember thinking that was so awesome as a kid, and still do. Like,
I'm
oh
sure.
man, Luke's even cooler now because he has a robot hand. Because cyborgs are cool, kids.
It's true. Undeniable.
Anyway, back to present day. It felt. Oh God. Okay. It felt like Vader told me the truth, but wouldn't that mean Ben Kenobi misled me? Either seems unthinkable. Makes it so hard to decide what I should do next. Anyway, plot. Then a plot occurred.
Remember how near the end of the lead up to Empire Strikes Back, it felt like this book was in a holding pattern in a big way? You know how right off the bat this book's going to feel like it's in a holding pattern?
Well, I did think this era is so. I'm so curious where this section of the comics is going to go, right? Because Empire, unlike the first movie, you could kind of be in a holding pattern because that movie does have an ending that implies more stuff is going on, but it has a stopping point. Empire really is a cliffhanger that this book can't resolve.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about when I saw what the next issue is, I'm like, nope, can't do that. So, like, it's very fascinating. So they're even more screwed in terms of having to tread water this time. Because it's stuff like this where it's like, I don't know, the movie didn't expressly, maybe Vader's lying, which is interesting. I was, what we've mentioned before, friends of the show, Brendan Jones has another podcast called Prodigious Saps, which is kind of about nostalgia, pop culture stuff. And they did a whole episode about seeing Star Wars for the first time. And they talked about when they saw Empire, several of the people on the show were like, yeah, I thought Vader was lying. I'm like, wow, how fascinating. That was never our read because it always was just, it was the truth, right? That he was his father. But it's so interesting to think that, right, coming out of that movie, people might be like, is he fucking with him?
You got to assume that a little bit because Vader's the bad guy, right?
And that's the thing I like about this is basically the comic going, we're not going to answer it.
Yeah.
We can't go with anything. We can't make any decisions going forward about what happens to these characters, basically.
Right. No,
So, yeah.
It's one advantage the more recent Marvel books has over this is like, because they have the definitive story of Anakin Skywalker, they can play around with this time period a lot more effectively.
No, that is a huge thing when I talk about, I know, because we're kind of rough on this comic at times, and I know that when you compare it to the newer stuff, which I think is been pretty much almost across the board excellent, the Marvel Star Wars comics of the last few years, we've both been big fans of those. Yes, they are in a much better position to tell Star Wars stories. They have so much more information, and
specifically Star
don't
Wars
have
stories that take place in between the movies, right? Because they know where it ends, and they have the background context of all the prequel stuff. They can play around with all the information that's known.
You can actually like make big swings in the characters that fit within, and exactly. It's the thing. It's what we love about it in the Jason Aaron comic in particular, right? You can play with Vader coming to realize Luke is his son because we never get that story in the movies. And that's really good stuff.
But the rest of this page is mostly Luke narrating out loud that there is a blockade runner and that he's approaching it, but it's the one with the death probe.
Yep, because it starts shooting him. He's like, what the hell is that? And then, you guys, Luke Skywalker's X-Wing disintegrates, which is not what's actually being shown on the page. I thought that was interesting. It explodes. It doesn't disintegrate.
Look, just because Archie Goodwin doesn't know what the word disintegrate means doesn't mean we should judge him for it, John.
But also, I feel like that, yes, because that's it exactly. You're like, nope, I've never seen a ship disintegrate in Star Wars, at least not from a laser blast like this. Look, so interesting he would choose that word. He just liked that word, I think.
Yeah, and look, we interpolate disintegrate as a word meaning like rendered unto dust, basically.
Right, yeah. Yes.
And it can be described like disintegration can be just like broken up into many tiny smaller parts. And while this page does make it look more like it's just exploding, I understand the impetus to use a thesaurus from time to time.
Such a Goodwin defender, man. Oh my God. It's nonstop apologies for Archie Goodwin. No.
But what's this? Luke survived.
Oh, he loves this. By the way, this is such an Archie Goodwin thing. He's done this a few times. I've never seen anyone eject in Star Wars like this. Just out into space. Now,
Clone
keep in mind,
Wars, but yeah,
that's always where I go to. Is like I don't have as much of a catalog in my brain of everything that happens in the animated shows. So maybe it did happen in Clone Wars or Rebels, something like that. But he's done this a few times now, and I just can't fathom seeing Luke Skywalker eject out into space. It feels crazy to me.
Well, and especially with a helmet that doesn't cover his whole head, so he has exposed skin in the vacuum of space.
It's a bad idea. Yeah, because he has, as we've talked about, they don't actually wear breathing masks when they're flying the ships normally, which is interesting, because that implies that there's some sort of pressurized oxygen atmosphere inside the cockpits of those things. Anyway, but suddenly there's like an emergency mask that deploys somehow because he has it on here. But yes, that does not solve the problem of your skin freezing.
Well, because if we go back to the last page, we see like, okay, there's Luke Skywalker with him in the top left panel, and he's got his classic X-Wing helmet on with the visor down and the chin strap. Where is this mask coming from?
I have no idea. And the thing is,
just leave it at that.
Because the ship is suddenly, I can believe that in the time it takes the blaster bolt or whatever to get to the X-Wing, he could hit eject. I do not think he has enough time to also subsequently grab an oxygen mask and put it on his face. Also, I want to talk about the on the same point, and we are being needlessly harsh, but that is the name of the game on this show. Let's talk about that glove. Also open to exposed skin. Forget the helmet. That suit's not airtight by any stretch of the imagination.
Oh, yeah. On the last page, there's like an open back of the palm. Though
in
the later panels, that doesn't exist.
Oh, yeah. Suddenly, all of a sudden, this thing is sealed up. And you're like, wait, what?
Let us assume that the same technology that makes the mask appear over him seals up his gloves as well.
I guess so. A wizard did it. All right.
May the pedantic be with you.
I always love the Simpsons thing about anytime you have a question like that, the answer is a wizard did it.
Look, and now we get Luke doing some space magic here because...
does he ever?
Talk about whole new toy box. We have Luke using the Force to grab R2 and like pull him to him.
You think Goodwin, once again, saw the movie when he saw Luke pull the lightsaber out of snow, he's like, yes, that's going to get me out of so many jams writing-wise. Ooh, thank you, George Lucas. Wow.
Well,
yes.
Look, we're going to get real hard, real fast into, like, what bullshit can the Force do? Oh, we're going to get into it.
Oh, boy. I have a feeling that's going to be the case for a lot of this comic now. Empire Strikes Back opened up a door, and Archie Goodwin will kick that the rest of the way in. My God. Yeah, because, he's like, oh no, I ejected, R2 ejected, but from the explosion, we could have been sent in wildly different directions. Wait, let me just reach out with the Force and pull R2 to me.
And he does.
Which he does.
But he also narrates all of that.
He sure does.
Yeah, and Goodwin doubling down on the whole Star Warrior thing, which we've always been
wait
like,
a minute. Hold on. I just read this. Luke's mind goes clear, wiped clean of anxiety of confusion, oblivious to the hiss of oxygen through his automatically sealing face mask.
There you go.
Fuck off, Goodwin. Come on, man.
The Star Warrior from Tatooine feels the Force, and momentarily, much less mystically, so does his drifting droid companion.
Goodwin, stop trying to make Star Warrior happen. He's trying very hard to make that happen.
Look, Star Warrior opened for Death Probe in their 86 tour, John.
That's right. Yeah, man. There was the sickest metal tour he ever went to. That's all he knows. Yeah.
Whoever these new kids Metallica are don't hold any polish to Death Probe and Star Warrior.
A Star Warrior could also be a total glam rock band too.
Oh,
They
absolutely.
might not be metal, yeah. Yes, but anyway, R2 is safe, and he's like, "Hoo boy," uh, and then he just has a quick line about like, because I did also think this is the bad thing about ejecting from an X-wing. Also begs the question of why we saw so many people just die in their X-wings when they could have ejected.
Don't
Right,
worry
like
about it. A wizard did it.
Porkins, yeah, Porkins could have made it, man. Is all I'm saying. But
Look, I don't
but
want to see the like tragic scene in which Porkins hits the eject button and then it just wedges him into his cockpit, trying to eject him.
Too much weight. No, damn it.
Poor Porkins.
But poor Porkins, man. He never got to eat another meal. But he no. So, but the other thing is, as they point out, yeah, it's just like once you've ejected into the vacuum of space, yeah, you're because Luke's like, we're not going to last long out here like this. I was going to say that's the other problem with ejecting as a single X-wing with no other ships around you. It's like, great, you didn't get blown up. Now you just get to die in space.
Yeah, but he's got R2 with him, and he says, at least I've got you. You can transmit long-range distress signals. Someone should come.
At least I'll die with my friend R2D2.
At least R2D2 will get to drift with your corpse for all of eternity for the
Yeah,
vacuum
yeah.
of space.
This was Luke Skywalker.
But, what's this? The blockade runner is turning around, shark-like, moving in for the kill.
Bottom. Yeah.
It opens fire on Luke, and Luke manages to use his own blaster to not shoot at the blockade runner, but
I don't
propel
know.
himself through space.
Oh my god. Okay. Yep. Sure. Yeah. Yep. Okay.
There's
yeah.
the gutter between the top panel of this page and the middle left panel is doing a lot of work.
A ton. And it's so insane to think that Luke, once again, trying to, this is I don't normally do this with comic books, but because this is based on a movie franchise, trying to imagine this in a film with Mark Hamill's going, pew, and him just sliding like across the screen is insane to think about.
Well, because
so,
you're
yeah.
imagining like a slow motion thing, like from Gravity or from The Martian, right? And like those movies are all about like hard science and figuring out how like the trajectories of things will work out for our characters. And this is Star Wars.
Yeah, in Gravity, there's that great thing where she's using the compressed air or whatever, the like fire extinguisher to move around in space, and it's like scary and kind of inexact. But we've talked about this. Star Wars space science has always been just kind of not dealt with because we don't really deal with people in space a lot. It's more just you fly your ship into space.
You really have to think about space in Star Wars like the ocean in a fantasy setting. Like, it's big and it's dangerous and you have to move through it to get to where you're going, and that's about it.
But yeah, it's just the thing where because that's the thing where I'm going, I never think about this stuff. Oh, because they never really tell stories that raise these kind of questions.
Very rarely. And if they do, they're more concerned with the mechanics of hyperspace than anything else.
Right, exactly. It's not like Star Trek does more stuff like this. There's a great episode of Voyager where Paris and Torres are stuck in space in their spacesuits, and the whole episode is about there's nothing around and they're running out of oxygen. And like, yeah, that's really about like space is vast and scary and a vacuum and it will kill you. Yeah, much more like Gravity. Anyway, though, luckily
we've got R2 to magnetize himself to the blockade runner so Luke can grab on.
They went ham on that magnetization effect.
Yeah, look, this is from the house that Magneto built, so if you're gonna show magnetism, you gotta go all out.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, this is what the readers of Marvel expect. All right.
But Luke narrating the whole fucking time.
Oh yeah. Well, he's got to.
Let me just read all the dialogue that Luke says over the course of these 5 panels here, because it starts right at the top when he says, "Can't hurt it with a handgun, little pal, but I can propel us out of the way. Only not too far. When the death-dealing Hulk lumbers past, I want you to be able to," and then it cuts to the next panel, "magnetize yourself to the hull," as he magnetizes himself to the hull.
Do you think that there was a point when he's like, I want you to wait. Wait. Magnetize yourself to the hull. Like he had to wait for it to get in a position to set that up.
And then Luke pulling out his lightsaber says, "Great, with you hanging on to my lightsaber can do the rest. Okay, this is the repair conduit in between the inner and outer hull. Don't know what's happening on board, but it can't be worse than playing floating target outside. Or look out, R2!" as he dodges some lasers in the last panel.
Oh God, it's terrible. It's really bad.
Endless narration.
Non-stop. There is so much concern. Always. And this is not just Star Wars, but a lot of comics of this era, when I go back to these, it's like, you guys are so concerned we're not going to be able to follow what's happening just from the art. There is a lot of worry about that.
There is I don't want to say problem, but there is a trend of lumping a lot of these very wordy books writers together in ways that I think is unhelpful to the art form, because you can have people like Goodwin who have characters just endlessly blathering and needlessly talking versus guys like Wolfman or Claremont that are using blocks of prose to set a mood and a tone.
Yes. It's different, right? You don't have a lot of Cyclops going, and now I'm going to activate my, optic blast to that. There's not that kind of stuff. It's more like, it is like Cyclops firing his optic blast, knows this could be the last chance to say, and it is about it is more novelistic in that way, right? It's about getting into the head of the characters. It's about, setting mood and theme. I agree that.
Saying what the character is doing while they're doing it.
This is more like if you read Stan Lee comics. He did a lot of this. And we love Stan.
It reads like the script for a radio drama, too.
It does have that, thinking fast, Luke Skywalker took the, that kind of stuff. I might know a thing or two about radio scripts.
When that death-dealing Hulk lumbers past, I want you to magnetize yourself to the hull. Well done, R2. As like the Foley guys are making clunking sounds in the background.
Once again, I might know a thing or two about that form of entertainment.
We don't advertise it much on this show. I think we should probably do it more. But yeah, John participates, acts, and in some cases helps write the Tesla City Stories, a local. I don't know how you describe the show that happens here in Portland.
We call it live vintage radio on stage. So you can go to teslacitystories.com and find out about all. We also have a podcast, so make sure you subscribe to that. You can hear some of these episodes we're talking about. It's very fun. Also participate with other Punch Up Entertainment host Brennan Jones is
absolutely
also in that. All right, so look out, R2, and there they go, and then welding beams from the damaged ceiling systems. I almost forgot about them. Thank God I almost forgot about them, but then remembered, so I can tell you and the readers at home what just happened.
You'd think they'd have activated immediately. Those few moments of hesitation put us right in their path. Your sensors detecting any other surprises, R2? Fadeep, an incoming transmission. Okay, here's what I dislike right here. So right now we established that Luke can understand what R2 is saying.
Yes. Yep.
Later, that will not be the case, and it annoyed the shit out of me.
And by the way, they usually can understand what R2's saying.
Luke can, and 3PO definitely can. Like it depends on the character, right? Like some characters can interpret the beeps and the whistles, and some can. That's fine.
Yes, this is a rule. It is, but it needs to be consistent that characters know that which characters can do that, can always do it, and which characters can't.
Yeah. And then we get just like a bug nuts illustration of Luke Skywalker's just like horrified face inside of his flight mask.
Well, because I like
code.
R2's audio amplification unit cuts in, and Luke's ears are suddenly assailed by. He did have a thesaurus open, by the way. He had to. We get it. Words. God. Imperial code.
Can't decipher what they're saying, but if it's being sent here, the ship must be under Empire's control. My God.
Yep. Yeah, it is really tried. Yeah, that is like, dear God.
Mother of God.
Come on, R2. And then something so silly about this drawing of Luke scampering up into the air vent.
They just needed a panel here to convey that Luke is moving.
But it looks like he's like, hold on, got it. Like it's a Winnie the Pooh kind of the way his legs are. Also, do his legs look kind of stubby here?
Also, I think
Like
it's him getting down out of the vent. Otherwise, how would R2 follow him?
Yeah, maybe you're right. Because you don't see R2 activate.
Yeah. I think canonically R2 doesn't have his like little thruster packs at this point.
Wait, though. But he is saying R2. Where is he?
Come on, R2, time to abandon this conduit.
Yeah, but R2 is behind him already on the ground.
I don't know, John.
So they are going up.
I guess they're going up. Yeah, I don't know.
I guess that makes sense too, because he magnetized to the bottom of the ship, and they're going up to the flight deck or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, he doesn't have that though.
You here?
And so yes, they run up there, but the repair hatch that leads the pair up into the vessel's cavernous cargo hold also brings them face to face with swift moving destruction.
And a fucking Judge Dredd bad guy is coming at them.
Oh, 100%, so Judge Dreddy. I do think that's between Valance and this. Goodwin or Infantino were definitely looking at some 2000 AD comics.
Yeah, because it's like the angriest looking forklift you've ever seen.
Look at this thing,
at
and
Luke Skywalker.
The curved pincers. Ding, ding, ar, ar, ar.
What possible design purpose could there be for fucking razor sharp pincers that clamp inward on a loading dock?
I think if we're going to be moving cargo, we really need something that can stab into the boxes and lift them up. That's really the most effective.
They're not moving blocks of ice.
No, I don't know what that is. It's like, this should look kind of like the power loaders in Aliens, right? I would think would be.
Yeah, I mean, it's a forklift.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, this is a very simple thing, and this is not an Imperial weapon. This is just a thing that's on the ship that is looks like it's a murder machine. Though this is a murder bot.
It's going to try, because in a sudden violent shift in the coloring scheme of the comic.
Yeah.
As we go from like...
It's almost like new colors took over, but they didn't, but it seems like it.
Silhouettes and highlights. And like, look, I get it if they're moving through like cramped corridors in the first top 4 panels of this page, and then they're down in the cargo hold. The coloring should shift there.
But they've already established that it's dark here too.
Yeah, but then we shift to the next page, and the coloring scheme is wildly different. We get like very flat matte colors for everything, and no highlighting or mood coloring.
And then you get Luke shoving R2 out of the way, which is pretty great.
As he's narrating the whole time, Luke says, "If you're saying you never saw a mechanized hold tender act like that, I agree, R2. Move," as he's shoving R2, before it gets its loading hooks into us, as the loading hooks are coming in.
Loading hooks. The deadliest weapon in Star Wars are loading hooks now.
Yeah.
It's almost like they put the hooks that you would use like for like bales of hay. They put on a robot.
In the middle left panel, we get this like goofy. Okay, so Luke is describing what's happening in his thought bubbles because he can't not, but that's fine, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to interpret what's happening here.
This is true because it's hurling cargo cases, and dodging them leaves my back open to be impaled.
So I guess with its hooks, it's grabbing cargo containers and like fucking praying mantis style, just like hurling them. I don't know.
Well, this is that kind of thing once again where it's like, thank God it's a comic book, because you couldn't make this happen in reality. Like, you wouldn't be able to. That would look insane. So it's only once again something that can be done in a gutter. Because it doesn't. It's hurt. It looks like it's just dropping them based on the way that it shows. It looks like it's just going. And based on the one piece of artwork.
If it's using its hooks to drop those cargo containers, how would Luke get impaled?
Yeah, that's I don't know, but
R2 headbutting.
R2 headbutting it is amazing. I got it. Ka-conk, ka-long.
I do love this panel of R2 just fucking like a fucking dumpster just rocketing into this thing's side with a ka-long.
And with no small strain to the little droid's leg lift actualizers, because once again, he doesn't have his little jet propellant things yet.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, once again, I love the one-off things that Goodwin does, where it's like, yeah, that doesn't make sense, but I'm just gonna put in this line about the strain on the leg lift actualizers. Shut up, nerds. That's how it happened.
But to the robot's consternation, as the rampaging hold tender whirls his way, Luke, with power born of his Jedi training, leaps straight back into harm's way. So I guess, like, R2 knocks it off course, but then Luke, trying to dodge, leaps back into its grasp.
Making R2's action completely meaningless.
Good thing we spent a whole page devoted to that. But thankfully, Luke finds the best way of defeating this thing, which is get up against a wall so it can't touch him and then shoot it in the face.
Why didn't he just shoot it before? We didn't have to be against a wall to shoot it. At any point when he was dodging, he could have pulled his blaster. By the way, back to what I'm talking about. That looks like no blaster that's ever been in Star Wars. You've seen 2 movies, guys. No excuse.
Yeah, that looks like a fucking Walther.
Yeah, well, it's got a hammer on it. Look, it's got you could cock it.
It's got like the beveled grip of like
yeah, and a weird
Bond gun. Yeah.
Yeah. If this was a James Bond comic and somebody shot this, I'd be like, yeah, no problem, fine, yeah, that makes complete sense.
Yeah. But if you look at the panel below that, it looks like a revolver.
Yes. Then suddenly it has the chambers on it. What are you doing? What are you doing, Infantino? You very dead man that I'm yelling at.
Thankfully, Luke monologues the whole time to let us know what's happening here. As he says,
"Oh yeah, thank God."
Must seem like I've blown the chance you gave me, but we're close enough to the wall to interfere with its pincer movements, long enough for me to do this. Dead front was the only angle to knock out its motor controls with one shot. No more menace, R2, but it's just burning junk now.
He also has a lightsaber, I'm just realizing too.
Yeah, 100%. He's had it the whole time.
Could have just sliced the pincers off.
Yep.
Won't. Done.
Yep.
Or the Force. We've already seen him use it to pull something. Conceivably, then you could push something, which we have seen him do. So
no, John, that's too cool. We can't do that.
They're like, no, we need to make Luke really lame and have him have a lot of trouble defeating this easily defeatable droid. This took way too long for Luke, especially a post-Empire Luke Skywalker, who's not the full Jedi Knight of Return of the Jedi, but he's a lot closer to that than he was. That's what I'm talking about. They're still writing New Hope Luke, even though we're post-Empire.
Yeah.
We've had
a Luke that has had a lightsaber duel with Darth Vader, but so far all we've seen him use the lightsaber for is to open a door.
And he's very happy to let people know he survived a lightsaber duel with Darth Vader, which we'll find out in a little bit.
Well,
in what is my least favorite part of this comic.
The automated conveyor overhead starts dropping barrels of fuel on him that are exploding, and now we've entered the exploding barrel level of the game.
Oh, this really feels like, you remember the Super Star Wars game?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I have fond memories of those. I love those games, but this feels like that, where like suddenly things are just raining down upon you as you side scrolling. But yes, it's liquid propellant, which I also love the use of.
Yeah, these are the nitro barrels from Crash Bandicoot, is what they are.
Oh, very much so. Yes, yeah. If he had said nitro barrels, I would have been like,
that tracks.
Sure. And they're out of there, man.
Well, not quite, because we need to waste a whole other page on them getting out of here. As everything's on fire, we get back to mood lighting for some reason.
Because it's moody now.
But R2 tries to open the door, as he classically does, though not classically with his scomp unit coming out of his forehead, which it never does.
Nope. And once again, I'm saying that we used to be... I am no longer forgiving. You've seen this shit now, guys. It is well established how these characters are. You have no excuse anymore in the art not to know where that comes out of R2 and stuff like that. You have so much information now.
So R2 lets out a tur-click va-woot breep, and Luke, understanding completely what that means, says, "You mean something's already overriding the whole computer system?"
And then I can only interpret this bleep all in that he's like, fucking yes! Jesus, didn't I just say that? You never listen, man.
I mean, R2 famously curses like a sailor.
we know this is true, yeah, but it is just like I have to imagine there are times it's like, what do you mean by this? What do you think I mean? I said it clearly. You understood me. God damn it! Tired of hanging around with this idiot. And then
Luke, using his lightsaber finally to open a door,
just remembers he had one. Do what you can against those flames, and then yes, R2's face opens up with a fire extinguisher. Lot going on in that head of his.
Sure.
Yeah, a lot of gadgets.
So,
I mean,
in the movies,
R2
canonically, the only thing we know he has in his head is a periscope and like the little scanner dish.
Yep. I guess now we know there's a fire extinguisher in there.
Bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
But Luke,
he's such. I mean, R2 is a Deus Ex Machina. In the movies, he can basically do whatever the plot needs him to.
I mean, in Revenge of the Sith, when he suddenly has a flamethrower and like an oil slick, and fucking rocket jets.
It is cool as hell when he takes those droids out, but also it does make you go, why isn't he using this all the time then?
Because he's an old droid, he can't be bothered.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the idea of we only first met him in his later years. All right, he used to be a badass. So anyway, yeah,
Luke jams his lightsaber in the panel next to the door, and that keeps it open for a little bit, so R2 can get underneath and Luke can roll underneath.
Yeah, how is I mean, once again, I know it's Star Wars, you guys, but you're telling me that by jamming what is basically just a laser blade into a thing, he has to hold it there, and if he removes it, the door will close again? That doesn't make any sense, you guys.
The laser sword is completing the circuit, John. That's the only thing that makes sense.
I guess that's the idea behind that anyway. Because it feels like he would just be wrecking it, and it would just open or whatever. It would just be open or closed at that point.
There's clear rules in Star Wars. If you blast the panel next to a door, the door is sealed shut. That's like Star Wars logic 101.
I think I blasted, because he says that in the first movie. It's like, can't you activate the door control? I think I blasted it. And it's like, no, so that's done. But nope. Never mind. Anyway, and I also like, he goes, get under fast, R2. I'm tumbling right behind you. I love that he used the word tumbling. From my tumbling days.
Look, you got to do a lot of tumbling on the sands of Tatooine.
You also, all the gear on his X-Wing, it makes it seem like he wouldn't roll very well.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
There's a lot of stuff sticking out from him. Anyway, this issue has problems, guys. The massive door thunders down, barely missing the lithe rolling figure. He's not lithe, once again, when he's got that shit on him, man. All right. Anyway, back to our new favorite villain. Ladies and gentlemen.
Status report on Special Probe 13K.
Yeah, I was going to say that, ladies and gentlemen, Ernest Borgnine. Look at that face.
Happening
that close-up face, that big, round, wrinkly that's a Borgnine face. Responding perfectly to all secondary programming, Admiral Krell. Then there is no reason not to initiate. Oh boy, this is very Nazi. The final cycle.
That's where I was getting the Nazi stuff from. Absolutely.
Yeah, there it is. Now I heard it. Now I see it. Yeah.
So they're getting a readout, maybe probably printing again, that there's a rebel interloper aboard the ship, and that the droid is trying to deal with it, but Admiral Krell's like, fuck that guy. We're putting the droid through its paces. Have him activate the final cycle.
It's final cycle.
That lone survivor is an unknown factor. We'll take no chances on him. Go to the final cycle now. Schnell.
Schnell. Scheiße. This is what you say later. But yeah, so I will say though, in Admiral Krell's defense, one of the smarter Imperial people that he's like, because they're just like, it's probably just one guy, it's fine, but he's like, no, kill him. Like, don't just be like, what can he do? We don't know who or what that is. Kill it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We like a smart bad guy.
I do. I will say though, I'm gonna have a problem with something Death Probe does later though.
Well, look, Death Probe is just a product of his upbringing.
I do love here's the thing. I do like a lot of the purpley prose Goodwin uses, but I also like when he's trying to goose intensity for things that isn't, like this, aboard the blockade runner. There is silence, grim and foreboding. It's like, all right, he's basically going, on the ship. Nothing's happening, but it's still scary. He's just going like, don't worry, guys. It's still exciting. Trust me. But yes, Luke stands still, not listening, but feeling.
Yeah, because he rushes forward. We get him charging through a door, and what's this? Hey, it's the Death Probe. Hey, Death Probe, how's it going?
Death Probe is back, folks. Woo! Death Probe!
But what's this? Death Probe has all these like little prongs and stuff attached to the ship? Yeah, it turns out Death Probe's been running the ship the whole time. Who knew? Shocker.
Yep. Also, kids, make sure you ask your parents to get you the Death Probe toy the next time you're at Sears.
I wish there was a Death Probe toy.
There's got to be a Death Probe. All right, I'm looking.
No, there's going to be like a Probe Droid toys, but there's no Death Probe. That's from one issue of the Star Wars comic book from 1981.
I'm looking.
No way.
I'm looking. This is the kind of stuff. This was like, because I mean, the only reason I think there might be is like the aforementioned Larry Hama. We're firmly in the world of them making G.I. Joe and Transform. I love the original Larry Hama G.I. Joe comics, which are actually really good. Like, they're actually very well written, except for the times you can be like, oh no, Cobra's attacking. It's time to get in our new Cobra Smasher Jeep or whatever. You know, it's just every issue had like clearly the toy. Yeah, that's the only reason I'm looking, is they were doing shit like that. We've talked about the troop transport that they put in here that did become a toy.
Thankfully, the Death Probe is in this room as Luke is again narrating, as it says, the thing's tapped into every system, made the entire ship practically an extension of itself. Someone's really augmented its programming. Probe droids were never meant to operate this independently. Darth Vader only used them to track me and the other rebels.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. You're correct. There is not a Death Probe. There is a Viper. It basically became the Viper, right?
Yeah.
That's your murdering
floating
probe droid toy.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
No.
Which is not quite as extreme as this, but I will say the Viper is close to this.
Sure. Yeah. No. This feels like, okay, maybe eventually the Viper droids would be like modeled on this and be like smaller and sleeker, and this was like the overwrought like World War I era tank kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I also, because the thing I do love about this whole issue is it's basically like, we're going to take that small probe thing from the movie and turn it into a monster, right? Like, we're going to do a monster story with that.
I kind of love that idea, actually.
I love the idea of the Death Probe. I don't know that it's executed super well in this, but it is cool in concept. Right. I liked when it was killing everybody, but Luke confronting is not great. That thing's tapped into every system, made the entire ship practically an extension of itself. Thanks, Luke.
Yeah, because then on the next page, Luke tries to shoot it, but what's this? R2 stops him.
Yeah. And look at that expression on Luke's face. He's like, the fuck, man? R2, you spoiled my shot.
Shoved by the little droid, Luke retreats from the probots?
Yeah.
I guess that's
I'm so glad you mentioned this, because I also, reading this morning, went, probot?
Because robot is a probe.
Yeah. But it's so unnecessary to call it that.
Also, probe droid. Come on.
Yeah, come on, man. Well, they don't really use robots in Star. They don't really use the word robot too often. You do use droid primarily.
Yeah. But once they're back out in the corridor, R2 hooks back in, and this is the part that frustrated me because Luke, still narrating the shit out of this book. We've reached the corridor printout terminal. Now you can use it to explain, as Luke can now suddenly not understand what R2 is saying.
Yeah, only watch yourself. That massive Imperial technology can also use it to fry your circuits. Seems like kind of a big risk then, Luke.
So R2 basically paints this picture that, okay, you can't destroy the Death Probe because it's hooked into the systems of the ship in such a way that if you destroy it, it will blow up the whole ship because it's hooked straight into the reactor.
And it's built into critical mass. Yeah.
Yeah. That the reactor is going to critical mass, and the ship is heading for the Rebel Armada rendezvous point. So the plan is this ship is going to get there and detonate with the Death Probe inside, destroying basically the whole rebel fleet.
I once again must say about Admiral Krell, not bad actually as a plan. Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty good. This guy, I gotta say, it's too bad. Spoilers, we lose this guy for the Empire because it seems like he's a real thinker in that group of mostly dummies. Let's be honest.
I mean, this also feels like a plan that could have come from Silas Tagg.
Oh
Is a
yeah.
bad guy who I think could have like employed the death probe plan if we'd had that kind of recurring.
By the
And
way, what
look,
is our current status of tags? Or are they all dead? Or
no, 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 no.
no. I didn't think so. I have a feeling we're gonna get some tags back in this.
We'll get there.
Well, because they have to, because they're not in the movie, so the comics can go nuts with them as the villains and have
Yeah.
them do stuff that affects the plot of the movies in no way. Great. Anyway,
So Luke has to come up with a plan to stop this all from happening.
no, Dorothy Hamill has to come up with a plan. Look at that face.
I know. Yeah, on the next page, he does look like Dorothy Hamill.
No, it's not. Yeah, sorry, I got the wrong thing. I meant to get photo reference from Mark Hamill. I got Dorothy Hamill instead. Oh, jeez, sorry,
Classic
folks.
blunder.
No, yeah, those two are always getting mixed up. Oh my god, I don't. He's done so many issues. I'm like, how are you no closer to something resembling Luke Skywalker? It's a block. He just can't.
I mean, Infantino has a thing that has affected many comic book artists as they've grown into like elder statesman artists, right? And that is same face. It is something that certain comic book artists just like can't escape. They have a couple of faces they can draw, and that's what all of their characters look like. It's especially true of female characters in a lot of, especially Marvel and DC books.
Yep.
But it's so true of male faces of especially older artists who are kind of like get into a rhythm. They have 2 or 3 faces they can draw, and that's it.
I bet if we were to go back and look at Infantino on the Flash, there's probably this same. This is probably also Barry Allen's face.
Wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. I wouldn't be. Yeah. Anyway, so they're running down the hall. Luke just has his lightsaber out so he can open another door. That's what he uses
Yoda
it
said
for.
in
and that's-
R2, there is no try, only do or do
Oh,
not.
boy.
And I mean to do.
Remember that in the movie, you guys?
So Luke goes
Yeah.
and starts wailing on the sealed door of the ship's cockpit, screaming at the top of his lungs, I am Luke Skywalker, destroyer of the Death Star.
The one who dueled Darth Vader and lived to tell about it. Boy, you want to talk about so far off character? He would never say that ever. Either one. That is insane.
So how does Luke come up with this plan? So the plan here is Luke seemingly understands the interior programming of this probe droid, because what ends up happening, to like kind of skip to the end a little bit, and over the next couple of pages, the probe droid will reroute itself because it knows it has Luke Skywalker. But Luke knows that its programming is as such that it will prioritize capturing Luke Skywalker over blowing up the Rebel fleet, when it was Admiral Krell who reprogrammed this droid and like missed some crucial piece of programming that erased the whole Luke Skywalker directive.
I don't think he knows that, though. I'm looking through it. Right, that's the thing. So he is just boasting, and it works out. Which,
Yeah.
once again, the most boastful Star Wars character. Han Solo says things like, the Millennium Falcon made the Kessel Run in under 12 parsecs. That's a Han Solo thing to be like, because you've never heard of the Millennium Falcon. But the idea of Luke going, it's me, Luke Skywalker, motherfuckers. You know what I've done. You know what I've done. Now, come to the ring. It's Luke Skywalker, destroyer of the Death Star, the one who dueled Darth Vader and lived to tell about it. Oh, he's got a folding chair.
And again, if part of his plan is to like braggadociously say that this makes a little bit more sense, but the plan is only works if Luke has information he can't possibly have.
And I don't think the book is indicating he has that information. So this is a disaster.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, the death probe hears Luke saying all this and then
Yeah.
decides to blow up a wall to knock Luke out.
Death Probe is like, huh? What? Luke Skywalker, you say?
And, having noted it, transmit an appropriate response in the form of a power overload in the wall circuit close by the troublemaker.
Yep. And then how Luke survives what we see here, I don't know.
The Force. It's pretty clear.
Well, it becomes clear, yes.
Because alarm sweeps R2's circuitry as his sensors indicate Luke's life functions have fallen to coma level.
That also made me laugh reading this. Uh-oh. This man's at coma levels of life senses. Uh-oh. His life functions have reached coma level.
I love in the color chart, and there's just like a black one near the bottom that says death. Slightly above that in gray, it says coma.
Coma level. Thank God he's almost at death level. If we don't move
like
fast,
the one
he'll soon
above
be
that
at
just
death
like
level.
Somewhere in like a deep brown is just like REM sleep. Above that is like a light green that says nap.
Yeah. It's God. It's when you write stuff, he has to just be typing stuff and tossing it off, right? Because no one would see that and go, "Yeah, that's good," and I feel good about this writing today.
Oh, I know about the coma level.
Yeah. And then I like R2 says that, and then Death Probe is like, "Let me take a look." Yep, you're right. Well, that's good enough.
But we get back to the Star Destroyer, and Death Probe is reporting back, and the officer on the bridge is saying 13K should have reached the Rebel fleet by now, but it's turned around. What?
Yeah, what is this about? But that's my boy, says Admiral Krell. What? Correct it. Get it back on course. He goes, no, I'm sorry, because it violates prior programming from Darth Vader himself. So I don't know how much time has passed since the end of Empire, but Darth Vader has put in, like, let a note if anything finds Luke Skywalker. I mean, I guess maybe that could have happened, but
yeah, again, we have no idea how much time has passed, so we have to assume that like weeks or months have passed.
Because I love the idea. I'm like, he probably just told people to do that. But I like the idea of Vader just going down the line of probe droids going, okay, open settings, find Luke Skywalker. Great, got that one done.
Priority 2, priority 1, bring me a cheeseburger.
You will get me a Coke Zero.
So yeah, apparently now, again, earlier in the issue, we sort of had a bit of inference in that like probe droids are not meant to work on like levels of ingenuity this complicated as what the Death Probe is doing.
Correct.
So now this thing has conflicting programming nodes when it's like, okay, it needs to blow up, but it also needs to deliver Luke Skywalker as a prisoner.
Yep.
And so it's trying to do both at the moment. So it has turned the blockade runner around and is flying it back to the Empire, whatever that may be.
Yeah. And then in the meantime, Luke was he faking the coma? Is that the idea?
So at the bottom of this page, we get R2's R2D2's sensors tell him much the same, that Luke is like still in a coma.
Right.
But his photoreceptors trained within the blockade runner's cockpit offer conflicting data as Luke is standing, and then we get Luke Skywalker profusely sweating with his internal monologue saying, just a little longer, gotta maintain control of my life functions through the Force. So
he is in a coma, but he's making himself move with the Force? Is that the idea?
Or I read it as like he's in a like such a deep meditated state with the Force he's like slowed his heartbeat down and like lowered his life functions to such a point that machines can't tell the difference.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah,
that's how I read it.
Yeah, I think you're right, but okay. Sure. Yeah, why not? I mean, the Force can do anything. We're at a point where the Force can do anything.
Archie Goodwin was like, oh, so the Force can do a bunch of stuff, huh? Okay. Well, that's just my Deus Ex Machina for literally any Luke story at this point.
Challenge accepted, Mr. Lucas. And so, yes, Luke plunges his lightsaber into the control panel of the ship.
Yeah, who basically makes it so the ship is now going to home back in on its point of origin.
Yeah.
Or the death probe will, I should say.
Yes, because when we turn to the page here, damage alarms shrill in the main computer chamber. Banks of console lights go suddenly dark as the Imperial droid finds computer circuitry controlling areas of the guidance system have been severed. Retaliatory action is immediate. So he basically is like, I've lost control of the ship and I have to regain it, right? Is the idea of what the droid is.
Yeah, until 13K realizes it has been tricked into weakening its control over a section containing a life pod. And as the side-mounted laser cannons track to vaporize Luke and R2 in mid-escape, the hyperdrive cuts in. So Luke basically hotwired this thing to go into hyperspace.
So interesting.
We cut back to Krell in like full villain mode.
Because he's all in red. And like
reds and blacks. As Darth Krell Maul says, naturally, we'll launch the probe. It will return here with its prisoner. We can still salvage some glory from that. In fact, I'll... Uh-oh.
And immediately this guy is like, actually, sir...
Because what's this? The blockade runner that is now homing in on the Star Destroyer is still set to explode.
Yep, and it's coming right at them.
So Krell is ordering, emergency stations, take evasive action, blast that thing out of the void.
Mm-hmm. That doesn't work.
No, explosion.
And this Star Destroyer goes up, man.
This is a cool looking panel.
It's a very cool panel. Very, very cool panel. This thing explodes big time. It blows up real good.
With a shockwave force, probe droid 13K ends its mission, and all of Admiral Krell's dreams for special glory in service to his Emperor.
Yep. Haha. And right before that happened, though, Luke and R2 ejected an escape pod, and they're now being picked up by X-Wings.
Yeah. As R2 says, "Werp deet, Frau Wheat," and Luke saying, now still not understanding him suddenly, "I think I understand what you mean, R2." As R2 is saying, "That was fucking close."
Jesus Christ. And he's going, he's like, when I came out here to check how I'd recuperated from my duel with Darth Vader, I didn't know it would be this much of a test. I still got my hand cut off, found out my greatest enemy is my father, and my best friend is frozen in carbonite, who knows where. But hey, we can still have a good time, man.
Death Probe ain't got nothing on Luke. But
As
freeze frame.
As he pats R2 on the head as well. Little buddy.
Look, there are many droids in the Star Wars universe that I have felt the need to like pet on the head. We've got the pit droids from
those they're just adorable. They're just
we have, of course, BB-8 is basically the cat of droids.
Yep.
And K2SO would be more of a patronizing pat on the pat on the head.
Yes. Yeah. Don't touch Chopper.
R2-D2 personally. No, don't. Look, that's how you lose a hand. As if you.
Yeah. Chopper is a feral street cat. If BB-8 is the house cat, Chopper is a feral street cat. He'll swipe. He'll take your hand off. Yeah. Hey, what the fuck are you doing, man?
Chopper's the kind of cat where like it'll rub up against you for pets, but the moment you acknowledge it with more pets than it thought was necessary, it will get for blood.
He's my favorite grumpy, murdering, bloodthirsty droid. He loves the killing, man. He loves it.
My favorite bit from Ahsoka was when they're like flying over the city, and Hera's just like, "We can't shoot him down; it'll blow up the city." And Chopper's like, is that a problem?
Yeah. I love any time he blows something up and just with his arms, he's like, wah, wah, yeah, die. Destruction. Anyway, next issue, Gorgoni. Next week, apparently, we're getting Lando and Chewbacca's search for Solo. Spoiler, they're not going to find him.
But they'll search, and that's where the adventure
is. That's all that they promise. But I just like the idea of, like, don't get your hopes up because we can't. We can't. No.
But yeah, that is the end of issue number 45. We are now entering a bit of a creative team mix-up going forward. We're going to see a lot of change-ups here in the near future, starting with next issue in terms of like who the creative team on this book is, and it's not going to settle down for quite some time, honestly.
Great. I mean, actually, that's exciting in some ways because we do get sort of stuck in a rut a little bit with always the same people and us sort of always, it is sort of a thing where it's like a lot of our Infantino complaints are like, well, as per usual, he's done this or whatever. So it'll be interesting to see different people's takes on it. I will say, because I just clicked on it, we won't show it here, but I just looked at the cover for the next issue, and good Lord. Good God. Yeah.
Look,
it looks fucking insane.
Just because we might be encountering a giant space genie in the next issue.
That's what it looks like.
We'll have to save that until next week. But I am excited to see what new creative fresh blood can bring to this book.
It's interesting because now we've been, we were sort of stagnating in the post New Hope. Now we're seeing what things they've gained from Empire and how they will use those. Is fascinating. So yes, I do look forward to more of this. And if you want more of this podcast and all the shows on the Punch Up Entertainment Network, you can find us on our Patreon page, patreon.podbean.com/punchup. Once again, that's patreon.podbean.com/punchup. For cool exclusive bonus content, as well as help out all the shows here on the network.
Absolutely. And you can, of course, one of the best ways to consume those shows and this show is over on our YouTube page. That's youtube.com/punchupentertainment. If you want to read along with us and see all of because as much as we love to describe in detail some of the art of this book, we only have so many words, unlike Archie Goodwin, who has a thesaurus's worth.
All the words. He has all the words.
But it really does help, follow along with the discussion, see what we're talking about when you read up and or look at the screen and see what we're talking about, especially with some of the goofy art errors we speak of in this. But
Indeed.
While you're there, if you could comment, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications whenever a new show from the Punch Up Entertainment Network drops, and let us know in the comments below what you're looking forward to, or what from the pre-Empire era do you want to see brought back? Do we want Valance back? Do we want some of the House of Tag? Are we looking forward to seeing maybe
Valance
a certain
back,
Rabbit Man again?
Oh, yeah, Jackson. But I always want Valance back. I love me some Valance. So
yeah, well, last we saw him, he was slowly dying like the Terminator in T2 in an acidic lake. So I
it is both Star Wars
on that one.
It is both. Well, I actually know he's been brought back in current continuity, though.
Yes.
But I will say, though, it is a comic book and Star Wars, so I don't believe anyone's ever dead. So,
That's fair.
But yeah, I think that'll wrap it up for this week.
Indeed. As always, I have been Mike Gargoni.
I'm John Campbell.
And remember, may the panel be with you.